Dear student, I, Dr. Shafali Jain, Assistant Professor, Tirthankar Mahavir University. Student, today we discuss about the indifference curve. A popular alternative in the previous videos, we also discussed about the cardinal approach of the utility and ordinal approach of the utility. In the ordinal approach utility, we preference the indifference curve. Now, question is here: what is indifference curve? A popular alternative to the margin utility analysis of demand is the indifference curve analysis. This is based on consumer preference and believes that we can't quantitatively measure human satisfaction in monetary terms. In the cardinal approach, we believe that we can measure the quantitative measurement of the human satisfaction in the money, but in the ordinal approach. In the ordinal approach, it gives we can't measure the human satisfaction in the monetary term. We can give the rank. So this approach assigns an as order to consume preferences rather than measure them in terms of money. Now, question is here: what is an indifference curve? An indifference curve is a curve that represents all the combinations of goods that give the same satisfaction to the consumer. Since all the combinations give the same amount of satisfaction, the consumer preference prefers them equally, hence the name indifference curve. Now, it means a curve of a curve in indifference curve, a graphical representation of a combination of different goods providing the same satisfaction level of the consumers. It is known indifference curve. What cannot put a numerical value on the level of satisfaction gained from the consumption of goods. However, they can tell their preferences between two goods, which goods gives them more or less satisfaction. This satisfaction level is depicted through an indifference curve. Uh, Here, an example to understand the indifference curve better. Suppose Peter has a 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. Now we ask Peter how many units of clothing is he willing to give up in exchange for an additional units of good food, so that his level of satisfaction remain unchanged. Now we see in this example, you are see here a table. There are a combination A, B, C, D, food and clothing. A combination 1 food and 12 clothing. B combination 2 food and 6 clothing. C combination is show 3 food and 4 clothing. D combination show 4 food and 3 clothing. In this diagrams, we can say that a combination where 1 food and 12 clothings. And in the second combination, you can see B point in this diagram, 6 clothing and 2 food. In the third C combination, you can see here in the diagram 3 food and 4 clothing combination. And the four D combination, you can see that 4 food and 4 food and 3 clothing in this diagram. This diagram shows an indifference curve. Any combination lies on this curve gives the same level of consumer satisfaction. Another name for it is the ISO utility curve. It means जो indifference curve होता है, in which goods gives them more or less satisfaction. This satisfaction level is depicted through an indifference curve. All the combination provide the consumer with an equal level of satisfaction. They prefer the goods equally. They prefer the goods equally. In other words, at any points of indifference curve give the same satisfaction level to the consumer, the same satisfaction level gained by the different combination of the two goods make the consumer indifference, which is shown in the table and diagram. Um, the same satisfaction level gained by the different combination of two goods make the consumer indifference, hence the name indifference curve. Because of this reason, an individual can use the indifference curve to depict the demand patterns and preferences of a consumer for a different sets of commodities. I gave you an example to define the indifference curve. In this example, you can understand Peter has 1 units of clothes, 1 units of food, and 12 units of clothing. Now we ask Peter how many units of clothing he is he willing to give up in exchange for an additional units of food so that this level of satisfaction remain unchanged. Peter agreed to give up now in the second B point. You can see Peter agrees to give up 6 units of clothing for an additional units of food. Hence, we have two combination of food and clothing giving equal satisfaction. Two as follows. As in the first combination, you can see uh, 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. And second combination, you can see 2 units of food and 6 units of clothing. I think now you have to understood what is indifference curve. Now, what is indifference map? An indifference map is a set of indifference curve. It depicts the complete picture of a consumer preferences. The following diagram show an indifference map consisting of three curves. Indifference we know that a consumer is indifferent among the combination laying on the same indifference curve. However, it is important to note that he prefers the combination on the higher indifference curve to those on the lower ones. This is because a higher indifference curve implies a higher level of satisfaction. Therefore, all combination on IC1 offer the same satisfaction, but all combination on IC2 give greater satisfaction than on IC1. It means which is this is because a high indifference curve give the high level of satisfaction, the lower indifference curve give the lower satisfaction level. When when more than one curve in this diagram you can see that more than one curve is represented on a graph showing a different combination two different combination of in this diagram you can see that here we are using different curve. It is not where more when more than one curve is represent on a graph showing and different combinations of two different goods on each curve. It is known as indifference curve. I have also explained you each indifferent curves on that graphs shown one satisfaction level all along the curve. In the other word, the representation of the consumer preferences by a number of indifference curve is known as an indifference map. An indifference map represents every possible indifference curve that a consumer has, which helps in ranking their preferences. Also, the combination of goods on the higher indifference curve, as you seen in this map, in this figure, that IC1, IC2, IC3. The higher IC3 uh, also give the higher level of satisfaction. The combination of both the higher indifference curve give the higher satisfaction level to the consumer. Therefore, the highest of indifference curve as IC3 curve of an indifference map is preferred by a consumer. Here, IC1, IC2, and IC3 are three different indifference curve, and the complete graph is known as a indifferent map. Each curve has its own level of satisfaction. However, at any point on each of curves gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Also, the higher the indifference curve, the higher satisfaction level. IC3 is more than IC2 and IC1. I think you have properly understood what is the indifference curve, and which indifference curve give the high level of satisfaction and which indifference curve the low level of satisfaction. I think you have to properly understood what is the indifference curve. Now we discuss the margin rate of substitution, but before discussing it, we should also know the some basic assumptions of an indifference curve analysis. I explain you the first assumption of an indifference curve analysis is that एक minute, is that is that utility is ordinal. I have also explained you before in the beginning of the videos that influence curve is depend on the ordinally approach. It means that the utility gained from the consumption of a good cannot be measured in cardinally numbers like 1, 2, 3, etc. It is therefore measured in ordinary numbers like first rank, second rank, third rank, etc. With cardinal numbers, one can easily compare the difference level of the satisfaction by ranking and preferences. The and next, जैसे the consumer consuming two goods is assumed to be rational. In other words, the basic motives of the consumer is to maximize his or her satisfaction level through the consumption of two goods. So it is compulsory the combination of the two goods. There are only two goods purchased and consumed by a consumer. It is because a graph has only two axes. In this graph, you can also see that there are two axes, x-axis and y-axis. So you can show the combination only two goods and represent of two goods will be easy. The consumer is fully aware and has complete knowledge about the price of both goods in the market. As in this graph, we are showing the foods and clothing. So the consumer has full knowledge about the food and clothing. You can also put X good and Y good. It's only an imaginative example. Uh, the price of the both goods is already given in this schedule. Just say I have also explained the combinations. What is and you can also give the prices in here. Then the taste, income, and habits of a consumer remain the same all the time. The preferences of a consumer are transitive. It means that consumer preference total accent. Yeah, in this diagram, I am showing clothing and give the giving the preference to the clothing. Um, yeah, good acts over buy, good buy, and good buy over good child. Then he and she prefers good acts over good buy. Suppose you are also listening example जैसे निशा suppose a girl है is consuming two goods chocolates and ice cream and he is willing to consume different combination of these goods to gain an equal level of satisfaction with each combination. These combinations are give her these combination are give her we also explain it with the schedules and suppose a combination one chocolate 16 ice cream and there जैसे I food and 12 ऐसी different combination we are also seen and also pointed out these combination uh, A B C D different points of combination. I have also explained it with different example. You have to completely understood what is the indifference curve, what is the indifference map, how we can explain it with the schedule, and how we can when the combination of the two goods. Now we discuss about the marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution, this is the rate at which a consumer is prepared to exchange a good X for Y. If we go back to Peter's example above, as I have given this example, uh, we have the following tables. I am also showing this table. In this table, in this example, Peter initially gives us 6 units of clothing to get an extra unit of food. Hence, the MRS. MRS, yeah, here you can see MRS is 6. Similarly, for subsequent exchanges, the MRS is 2 of X for buy is the amount of buy whose loss can be compensated by the unit gain of X, keeping the satisfaction the same. As Peter gets more units of food, MRS starts falling. Here you can see in this schedule, meaning he is prepared to give up fewer units of clothing for food. There are two reasons. There are two reasons for this. As Peter gets more, you can see that as Peter gets more units of food, he intensity to desire for additional units of food decrease, and most of the goods are imperfect substitute for one another. If they could substitute one another perfectly, then MRS would remain constant. I think you have to understood how when a person wants things, he have to give up the other goods. He has to give up the other goods. Now we are also explained what is the properties of an indifference curve. Here are the properties of indifference curve. And I see slope downwards to the right. This slope signifies that when the quantity of one commodity is combination is increased, the amount of the other commodity reduces. This is essential for the level of satisfaction to remain the same on an indifference curve. Indifference curve always slope downward from left to right. As you are also seen in this diagram. Key from our we have also you can also see in this diagram that the slope of the indifference curve up to down, and you are also seeing that it is down from up to down. It is in this figure you can see as I have also explained you, an indifference curve is defined as a curve that gives an equal level of satisfaction to a consumer at every possible combination. If it is possible, when a consumer is willing to sacrifice some quantity of a good to gain an additional unit of another good. If a consumer is having more of a good without any fall in another good, the consumer will achieve a higher satisfaction level instead to of equal. This fall in units of one good to gain more of another goods give a downward slope to the indifference curve as you seen in the diagrams. I think you have understood why indifference comes downward to the right. Now, next, a higher indifference curve to the right, a higher indifference curve to the right of another represent a higher level of satisfaction. It means uh, here is a figure IC2 gives more level of satisfaction than IC1 curve. This is because IC2 contains more units, at least one commodity. You can see in this diagram, IC2 has two commodities of X goods and Y1 commodities of Y goods. While IC1 has only X1 commodities of X commodity and Y1 commodity of Y commodity. So it is the extra commodities utilities IC2 has. So IC2 has a more level of satisfaction. In this figure, you can see a higher indifference curve represent a higher level of satisfaction, or we can say that an indifference curve to the right to another gives more satisfaction. This property of the indifference curve is based on the assumptions of monotonic preferences. What is monotonic preferences? Monotonic preferences means that a consumer will always prefer a larger bundle as it gives him or her a higher satisfaction level. In the other words, as a consumer prefers more goods and a higher indifference curve will give a higher satisfaction level. Now, I think you have understood why a higher indifference curve give a high level of satisfaction, or a uh, lower indifference curve has a lower points of satisfaction. Now we discuss about the indifference curve do not intersect to each other. So, third property, two indifference curve do not intersect. You are seeing in this figure, if they did, the point of intersection would imply two different level of satisfaction, which is impossible. Suppose, as you see in this figure, IC curve intersect at point A. Here you can see it meant A. Then A is equal to C. ये A इसके equal है. A तो lies on the same IC2, while A second A is equal to B lies to the IC1, while B is lies to the IC1, or while C lies to the IC2. Now you can see B is equal to C because of transitivity assumption, but it is impossible because point C gives higher level of satisfaction than point B. I think you have understood that it means that every point of an individual's give the same combination, give the same satisfaction to the consumer. Also, an indifferent maps consist of different indifference curve with different satisfaction level in each curve. But if two indifference curve intersect with each other, it would means that one point on each curve gives the same level of satisfaction, which is seen in this figure, but it is impossible, which contradicts the meaning of an indifference map. Therefore, two indifference curves never intersect each other because they never gives the same level of satisfaction. Now, fourth, an IC is always convex to the origin. You can see that it meant uh, the shape of an interface curve is based on the diminishing marginal rate of the substitution. I have also explained what is the diminishing marginal rate of substitution. The shape of an indifference curve is based on the diminishing marginal rate of substitution. It means that to gain a single extra unit of a good, a consumer is willing to sacrifice more of another goods. So its slope is always up to down. As in this, in the case of an example also given you, a consumer to gain one more unit of X good, he and she is willing to sacrifice more unit of if he gain he more units of good buying. So, the diminishing marginal rate of substitution gives a convex shape to an indifference curve. Next step, an indifference curve cannot touch either x-axis or y-axis. If it touches x, as you see in this figure, if it touches x-axis as in figure at m, the consumer will be having OM quantity of good X and none of Y. While you have to swing two goods combination in this indifference curve. Or similarly, if it touches Y axis at L, you are seeing here the consumer will have only ON of Y goods and none of X. This is against the assumptions of consumer consumes combination of two goods. Right? So you can see in this figure, this is not possible. This figure is not possible because our assumption that a consumer consider combination of two commodities and wants both of them. If the curve touches either of the axis, then it means that he is satisfied with only one commodity and does not want the other, which is a contrary of our assumptions. I think you have understood that indifference curve never touches the x-axis or y-axis. The indifference because the indifference curve is based on the assumptions on that a consumer consider different combination. Now indifference curves are not necessarily parallel to each other. This is because necessarily parallel, never parallel to each other. This is because MRS may differ for different indifference curve. If MRS differ, the slope of the indifference curve also differ. Now, I have also explained about the margin. MRS means margin rate of substitution. Now, next two commodities are preferred substitute for each other. In this case, the indifference curve is a straight line where MRS is constant, which is seen in this figure. If two commodities are perfect substitute, perfect substitute then indifference curve, it means if MRS is constant, uh, then indifference curve is a straight line, as you can see in this figure. If the margin rate of it means if the margin rate of substitution had remained constant, the indifference curve would have been a diagonal, diagonal straight as a 45-degree angle and the marginal do not rate of substitution increases nor does it remain constant. The marginal rate of substitution neither increase nor does it remain constant. Now, two goods are perfect complementary goods. An example of such goods would be gasoline and water in a car. In such cases, IC will be L-shaped and convex to the origin. As you see in this figure, complementary goods, which goods are depend to each other, as petrol, car, ink, pen, In the case of complementary goods, indifference curve always shapes to be L-shaped. I think you have understood properly what is the properties of indifference curve, and what is the meaning of indifference curve, and what is the indifference map. Now we discuss about the advantages of indifference curve. First advantage is the indifference curve is dispenses with cardinal measurement of the utility. It means the entire utility analysis assumes that utility is a cardinally measurable quantity which can be assigned weight, weights called until until if the utility is of an apple of 10 utils, of a banana 20 utils, and of a cherry 40 utils, then the utility of a banana is twice that of an apple, and of a cherry four times that of an apple, and twice of that of a banana. And this is not measurability but transitivity. In fact, the utility which a commodity possesses for a consumer is some things subjective and psychological, and therefore cannot be measured quantitatively. Indifference approach is superior to the utility analysis because it measures utility ordinarily in the ordinary concept. The consumer arranges the various combination of goods in a scale of preferences marked at first, second, third, etc. He can tell whether he prefers the first to second or the second to the first, or he is indifferent between them, but he cannot tell why how much he prefers one to the other. The ordinal method and the assumptions of transitivity make these techniques more realistic. Next, the advantage of indifference curve, it studies combination of two goods instead of one goods. I have also explained it in the indifference curve, indifference map, and indifference schedule. The utility approach is a single commodity analysis in which the utility of one commodity is regarded independent of the other. Marshall avoided the discussion of the substitutes and complementary goods by grouping them together as one commodity. This assumption is far from the reality because a consumer buy not one but combination of goods at a time. The indifference curve techniques is a two commodity model which discusses consumer behavior in the case of substitutes and complementaries and unrelated goods. It is thus superior to the utility analysis, and in the indifference curve assumptions and characteristics, I also says you that it is the combination of the two goods or two commodities. Next, the advantage of indifference curve is it provides a better classification of goods into substitutes and complementary. First of all, I want to ask what is the substitute goods? Substitute goods is that goods which we can use the another goods in place of one goods, as tea and coffee. They are sort of Coke and Pepsi. And complementary goods, these goods which are dependent to each other, as car, petrol, ink, chai, bread, butter. The earlier economics explained the substitute and complementary in terms of the cross elasticity of demand. Hicks considered this inadequate and explained them after making compensating variations in income. He thus overcomes to be found in the traditional classification of substitutes and complementary. And in the indifference curve, we also show the combination of substitutes goods and complementary goods also. Next, for advantage, it explains the law of diminishing margin utility without the unrealistic assumptions of the utility analysis. The utility analysis, which is applicable to all types of goods, including money. Since this law is based on the cardinal measurement, it passes all the defects inherent in the cardinal analysis. In the preferences theory, this law has been replaced by the principle of diminishing margin rate of substitution. The latter, according to Professor Hicks, which is the founder of the ordinal and ordinal approach, is not mere transition, but it is a positive change. It is a scientific ism, and at the same time, free from the psychological quantitative measurements of the utility analysis. The application of this principle in the field of consumption, production, and distribution has made economics more realistic. Now, next advantage and difference curve, it is free from the assumptions of constant marginal utility of money. As I have also explained the previous videos, the utility analysis assumed constant marginal utility of money. Marshall justified it on the plea that an individual consumer spent only small parts of his whole expenditure on any one things at a time. This assumption makes the utility theory unrealistic is in more than one way. It is applicable to a single commodity model. It fails to use model as the measuring rod of an individual satisfaction derived from the consumption of various goods. On the other hand, the indifference techniques analyzes the income effect when the income of consumer changes. Now, next advantage of the indifference curve, it explains the dual effect to the price. Uh, One of the main defects in the Marshall utility analysis is that it fails to analyze the income and substitutions effect of a price change. In the indifference curve techniques, when the price of a good falls, the real income of a consumer increases. This is the income effect. Secondly, with the fall in price, the good becomes cheaper. The indifference curve techniques is definitely superior to the utility analysis because it discusses the income effect. When the consumer's income changes, the price effect when the price of a particular goods changes, and it is dual effect in the form of the income and substitution effect. It also studies the cross effect when with the change in the consumer's income, the price of the other goods also changes. Next, indifference curve, it explains the proportionality rule in a better way. It means the indifference curve techniques explains consumer equilibrium in a similar but better way than the Marshall proportionality rule. The consumer is in equilibrium at a point where his budget line is tangent to the indifference curve. At this point, the slope of indifference curve equal the budget line. So next is it last next and last advantage of indifference curve. It explains the law of demand more realistically. The interference curve techniques explain the Marshall law of demand in a more realistic manner in more than one way. It is a, because it is a psychological assumptions of the utility analysis. It explains the effect of the fall in price of an inferior goods on consumers' demand, giving goods which remained a paradox for Marshall throughout have been explained with the help of these techniques. Whereas in the Marshall law of demand, the demand for a commodity varies inversely with its price, and the demand curve slows negativity downward to the right. The interference curve analysis explains two more situations. With the fall in the price of a commodity, its demand remains unchanged. It happens in the case of those inferior goods whose income effect is actually equal substitutions effect. When the price of the commodity falls, its demand also falls. This is the case of given goods whose income effect outweighs and substitution effect, and the demand curve slopes upward, having a positive slope. So uh, uh, I think you have to perfectly understood what is the advantages of indifference curve. In this video, we discuss about the indifference, the meaning of indifference curve, the indifference curve schedule, indifference uh, curve figure, and indifference map, and the properties of indifference curve and the advantages of indifference curve. Students, I think you have to understood properly all the things. And now, thanks a lot for watching this.